As we mature, we go from reacting to acting. And the difference is the thoughtfulness. It's exactly what you said a minute ago, Tom, when you said you've got that gatekeeper and saying, okay, no, we're not going to say that. That's the acting. That's the sorting through possibilities and saying it's a
Yeah.
conscious choice. And in many ways, emotional sobriety is about getting more conscious like that, isn't it?
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
I'm Tom Rutledge. I'm with Dr. Alan Berger and our wonderful taskmaster and producer, Patrick Newman. So how are you guys doing?
Well, just before we started today, Patrick said maybe it's a good idea to just check in with each other. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful idea. It keeps us personal because in many ways, emotional sobriety is about getting more personal.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean taking things personally, as we're going to find out as we go through this thing. But I think it's a great idea to talk about that for a few minutes and to check in with each other because, look, we're all in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I love about this podcast, right? We're all on this journey together and at different stages of the journey, but still together because, what we got today is what's happening today in our lives, right?
Right. Like the old guy in AA used to say, I used to go to, used to say, the whoever got up first this morning has the most sober time.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. Yeah, at some point in time, there was even a movement about not counting days because, in Connecticut, when AA was just first conceived, right? And we're talking in the first couple of years, everybody, once people hit a year, they started to relapse. And it's like they thought, well, I got this thing figured out now. And they're still figuring it out, right? It's an ongoing experience, right? And experiment.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about our checking in, what I thought when Patrick said that, let's check in, thought, well, all we're really doing is just starting the recording early because that's what the three of us do anyway. If you think about it, when we connect in, it's like this is our time together, and it's all, to me, it's always it's a combo of just getting together with friends, but also it's always there's always support here if I need it, and each one of us at different times has needed it.
Well, let's start with what happened today. I was looking forward to our show and I was all set at 5 o'clock to go ahead and start recording. And then at 4 o'clock, I'm ordering what looks like it's going to be some wonderful Italian food from Di Napoli's. They were voted best meatball in New Jersey. Now, that's gotta be. I'm going to test it now later on. I thought I'd have that meatball in me by now, but later on I'm going to test this.
We're working with expectations. Be careful, man.
But my stomach is glad for that because it's already celebrated. I haven't even eaten it yet, and I'm already tasting that meatball because I got an expectation what it's going to taste like. So I'm all ready to do this, and then I look down at my phone, and Patrick and you guys are checking in with each other. I'll be right there. I'm going, what are they talking about? Why are they getting in the room so early? And then I realized, no, Alan, it's a 3-hour time difference, not 4 hours. So I quickly scramble, right? I try to call the restaurant and say, hey, man, can I push that order back until, 5:15? I'll go pick it up, after we're done. And I couldn't get through to the place. And so then I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and tell these guys I've been abducted by aliens and that the aliens have told me that they're going to let me go at 4 30.
which
And then,
which we bought. So it's like
I totally believe. And so, but you know, it's so funny. It's the last thing I thought. The first thing I thought about was lying. I swear to God.
I know.
Like, I'll tell them Jess is deathly sick, and I have to run out and get some medicine so she can survive the evening. And then I go, wait a minute. Just tell them the truth.
No, the lie. That's a real. I mean, this is a whole other. This is part of the whole thing. The lying guys. No, we don't get. We get rid of no one. So it's like the lying guy is on my committee always, and he's the He's the quickest thinker I have on my entire committee, and they're good lies. It's like it's like if nothing else, when all those years I spent just screwing things up, I learned to lie very well. And it's like and that guy, his talents go, unfortunately for him, unused.
It's so true. It's just so true. It's so crazy that's the first thought.
Or is what I just said true? I don't know. I can't tell you that.
Oh, it's so true for me. I mean, I got to catch myself all the time. And then, of course, I let you guys know, and you say, all right, yeah, fine. No, I mean, you guys have that, but especially with my move and stuff, you've shown an incredible amount of flexibility, which in a way is a segue into this, but we'll check in with you guys. But I just want to say I appreciate your flexibility today.
No, absolutely. And one of the things I told you was that I've been, and I'll do this as my little check-in too. It's like I've been in one of those places where I've been just feeling overwhelmed, but doing nothing about it. And it's so the idea is, I could always just, the things I feel like I'm behind on, I could actually just go. It's not like I'm the weekends are pretty good for me, and it's like, but it's just me procrastinating. So when I was already up here ready to go, and you weren't there, I sat there and got caught up on several things. So you actually inadvertently helped me kind of get some anxiety taken care of for me. So I appreciate that. But
that's good news. That's that. But I've done that a lot of times too when things don't turn out the way that I was planning them to. I try to find something I can do to fill that space.
Yep.
That's going to be of value to me, and that's one way I can do that without getting hung up on that. It didn't go the way I wanted it to go.
Patrick, how you doing?
I'm good. I spent the morning talking to an old friend who's got road rage issues and has been getting into violent altercations on the road with parents in the car and stuff. And I was relating to him that with my issues with substance abuse, the problems are sitting right there on top. And there's well-worn guidelines that I can follow if I choose to, that'll take me to a place of relative security, stability, or that's the idea anyway. But I think that when it comes to some of these other isms, it's not always as clear a map as to what the problem is and how to extricate yourself from that. And so I just did a lot of listening and then also reflecting on my relative place and on the recovery and mental health spectrum. And just trying to be there for a friend and not having any easy answers. But I told him I'm going to check in with him again next week, and we're going to make it a weekly thing. So we'll see if maybe I can be some good support there.
I'm sure you can. My wife used to call me God of the Highway because I was pretty out of control if somebody upset me in traffic, and she would say stuff like, if they knew who you were, I bet you they would pull you over and ask your advice, but they just don't know who you are, And so it's one thing I would say is you still can use these. There's still abstinence involved, and they're still putting down the drink. It's just a different form, like you're talking about. How do you get these steps to fit for something like that when it does need to begin with a behavioral change? But of course, as we're talking about here with emotional sobriety, it's what's underneath that needs resolved. Yeah.
Well, it's so fitting that you share that, Patrick, because that's so relevant to our discussion. I mean, I was going to say, encourage your friend to listen to our podcast and to come and join us on Thursday nights, right, at the emotional sobriety meeting, because, to me, I've worked with a lot of, men and women with road rage, and it's always this expectation, first of all, that people are supposed to drive the way that you think they're supposed to drive. And secondly, if they don't, you take it very personally. How dare they do that to me? Right. And so it's like those two things are at the heart of this whole thing of emotional sobriety.
Yep. How dare! I love that. How dare! Because that's exactly it. I know it from personal experience. How dare that person not drive right? You know, it's like, yeah,
And beneath the rage, there's pain, right? I mean, there's
yeah.
something that's not the anger that's driving the anger.
Well, for me, a lot. I mean, it was you keep
Yeah.
going down and down, but control is the thing. I was such a control freak. I mean, there's just one more thing that I just just felt like I needed to be. I mean, I didn't think it that way, but I mean, I look back at it, I needed to control it. It's like I didn't like things happening that weren't supposed to happen. You know, like,
no, it's right on, man. It is that control thing, is that everybody should be doing what I think they should be doing. If they don't,
yep. Right. I mean, I probably told you guys this, but one of the I would be dead if I weren't married to Dee Dee. Let's face it. I mean, she's been able to confront everything that I needed to have confronted and help me in so many ways just by saying the truth to me, which is a lot of what we're talking about, and a lot of what I know. Even in chapter 2 with emotional sobriety, we're talking about just basically. I don't know if these are the words you use in there, but for me, my mindset is intimacy versus strategy, letting go of strategy and intimacy, just telling the truth, into me see. And, and I remember coming home from work one day and finding a book that apparently Dee Dee was reading, had a lot of underlining in it, called Living with Control Freaks. Anybody want to guess what I felt? It's like, yeah, I was pissed off. It's like, I mean, and then so like a good control freak, I read it because I needed to know what the enemy camp was dealing with. And guess what? It started to help me because I accidentally read a self-help book.
That's right. And I
good
love
luck
that.
to your friend. I do tell your friend to join us.
I think he might.
That would be great. And that kind of segues into, in the beginning of the chapter, one of the things I say about defining emotional sobriety is that it's a mental state in which we do not react to our changing emotions as though they were the governing facts of our life. I mean, so let's spend some time chewing on that today. And Patrick, at the beginning of this, she said, let's kind of break up this chapter into 3 segments. So, we talked about maybe starting with Ernie Larson, but I think it's better to start with this, given the conversation right now, is that there was, I'm a big fan of Dr. Nathaniel Branden. I mean, he's a self-esteem expert and we lost him a number of years ago, prolific writer and penetrating insights into emotional sobriety. And one of our dear friends and colleagues on Thursday night, Roger Andes, actually moved out to Los Angeles to go into therapy with Dr. Branden, and was in his groups and did some individual work with him for a number of years. And one of the things he said is that we've got to guard against, and I like this, it's like having that little guard sitting in our mind saying, hey, this is appropriate, this may not be, right? He says we've got to guard against treating our emotions as though they are an infallible guide to the truth.
Yes. Beautiful.
Now, that's not to say that we don't need to respect our emotions. I mean, so this is a fine dance that we're engaging in here with emotional sobriety, because you and I, we do a lot of work with people respecting what they're feeling.
Literally, any emotion is true. If I, it's like, but what you're talking about, I believe, is making the mistake of the cognitive piece that I have attached or is attached to this emotion. I'm buying that too. It's just coming as a package. It's like, I'm pissed off because this guy in traffic is treating this way, or I don't like the fact that you can't tell time since you moved to Philadelphia,
right,
or something like that. It's like that. If I say I'm angry, then I'm okay. Then I'm angry. It's like, if I'm sad, I'm sad. I'm not going to argue with that. But it's like, where are you going next with that? And that's where for me, I always call it the gatekeeper. Very busy guy on my committee, the gatekeeper, the one that says, nope, no, we're not going to, no, we're definitely not going to say that. And no, we would never say that. And then we find one we let through. It's like, because it's like, it's okay. I always want people to know, thank goodness ethics apply to behavior, not to thoughts and feelings. It's a saving grace for me, because I spent so many years
well
feeling guilty for all the things I thought and felt. It's like, but what you're talking about with what Brandon's saying is so important, to be able to have that judgment. And that's what it is. It's good judgment.
That's right. Because what we could change that is to say it and I like how you were articulating that, Tom, is that we can respect our emotions, but not give them privilege. And the way I would say the difference is, and like you were talking about, is if I understand what I'm feeling is what I'm feeling, that's reality. That's my subjective reality.
It's a starting place.
It's a starting place. But where I make the mistake is thinking my reaction is based on reality. See, instead of it being a subjective reality.
Subjective, yeah.
Right. That's the difference, is that when I say it's an infallible guide to, Brandon says, the truth, we could say not treating our emotions as though they're an infallible guide to reality. And where it comes from is the conclusion I'm drawing. And that's where you say that's the cognitive piece. Mm-hmm. What conclusion did I draw about that guy driving the way he's driving? Mm-hmm. Well, and we've talked so much about how in emotional sobriety, one of the gatekeepers is keeping an eye on, are you taking this personally? Mm-hmm. Right? That's the gatekeeper, mm-hmm. is keeping a very close eye, because as soon as I take it personally, then what follows is, how dare you? How dare you do that? Don't you know who I am? Right? It's
that's, when we talk about feeling language, it's like, how dare you is a feeling term. It is an emotion. It's like, when you say that, I can just call up all those memories in my whole body and feel that. It's just, I'm puffed up. I'm very angry, and I am so entitled.
Yes. So entitled.
And of course, the bizarre thing is all of this happening inside of a man who's just struggling constantly with self-esteem.
That's right. It totally is a struggle with self-esteem, because why am I making it all about me all the time? Right. Yeah. We have to say, well, what is that about? And there's two sides of that, as we talked about last time. I love the discussion we had last Thursday in the emotional sobriety meeting about how self-hate involves two things. Mm-hmm. Self-minimizing, but also
aggrandizing. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? We fall out of both sides of that bed. Mm-hmm. And it's the weirdest thing, because you'd think with self-hate, you wouldn't fall out of that entitlement side. Mm-hmm. But it's the same thing. If I can claim special status and you give it to me, then of course I'm okay. This proves it. I mean, right? Because of course I need that and external validation to prove that I'm okay. I mean, because, left to my devices, I know, right, that I'm the biggest piece of crap in the room.
One of the mistakes that we make, that I think we find ourselves correcting in ourselves and working with other people, although we work, is how easily our Western humanoid selves immediately take things into these binary, oversimplified choices. And so the reason we have to get this validation is because these negative feelings, these negative beliefs that we have, they have unconsciously and later consciously in there are constantly looking for validation. So there's, you and I've talked a lot about the I told you so guy on the committee. Those energies are working against us. So it makes sense that when we do not have enough of the insight about the bigger picture, that we are desperately trying to prove ourselves okay in any way we can. Even just being right about this could mean the world to me. We don't think about it that way, but that's how big the energy is. I need you to understand this. I need you to tell me that I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
And
I need you to do things my way so that I feel that
so that my head doesn't take me the other direction.
That's right. See, and see that these things, these are subtle, unconscious manipulations. I mean, we're not sitting there consciously figuring this out and doing it at the time. It's such an automatic reaction.
Right.
to a strategy we have to try to get a hold of some kind of self-esteem.
Well, what you just said is so important about the strategy thing. It's like, because, I mean, we're humans, and one of the things we're doing as humans, and even, you know, just as animals, we're in a process constantly of having needs and getting those needs met. That's what we do. You know, that's life. That's how we do that. And the idea is, if we are not any good at, and I'm speak as if for an earlier version of myself, and I'll say any good. If I'm not any good at identifying the needs I have, therefore not at all good at being able to be resourceful about getting needs met. And you talk about this, comes up in chapter 2 of your book too, about self-support. If I can't do that, it's not that I'm going to sit around and not have needs and not try to get needs met. It just means I'm going to be doing it indirectly, which means by way of manipulation.
That's right.
You know, it's not like when we say manipulation, I think it has a connotation. People think that we have some sort of secret agenda all the time, and that we're some kind of supervillain, you know, it's like sometimes, but no, mostly we're just unconsciously trying to get these needs met. And only with hindsight are we going to be able to figure out what we're doing wrong.
Yes, that's right on. That's right on. You know, I was thinking about that, and we'll get into this next week when we talk about self-support, and then maybe we'll save stage 1 and stage 2 recovery for the last segment of this chapter. But, you know, one of the things what you said is to be able to identify what I need becomes a very important step in being able to take care of myself.
Yeah. I mean, it's essential. It's like, talk about, you say 12 essential insights. This is an essential piece. I have to be able to identify it, you can't solve a problem you can't define.
That's right. And now if we grow up in a situation where it's not okay to need anything, it's not okay to express your needs,
right,
then what starts to happen has been my experience personally, and also with a lot of the people I've worked with, is we have difficulty identifying our needs and giving voice to it. And so it creates quite a dilemma then, because what I remember doing with that is, if I'm unable to identify it, I try to figure out, well, what might somebody be feeling in a situation like this?
Mm-hmm.
And now I try to
really hypothetically, you just got to go yeah.
I operate from a stereotype. Well, I should be feeling this, so I'll go ahead and role play. I'll act as if this is how I feel,
mm-hmm.
right? And which is so funny, because I'm not able to really support it, because it's not my authentic need. Mm-hmm. It's what I think I should be feeling at this time, what I think I should be doing, how I think I should be acting. I mean, I remember this very closely when I started to have a girlfriend and we got close. I had this idea that I was not ever supposed to feel any anxiety in that closeness. Like afraid of losing myself and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I would find myself pulling away instead of moving towards her name was Charlene. I can even remember her name. I remember the situation where it happened. And I knew I was supposed to be reacting a certain way, so I started to play act this certain way, but I wasn't feeling any of it. I was feeling anxious. Oh my God, I'm getting close to her. You know, what if she doesn't like me? I had all of this anxiety going on, and I could feel every part of me wanting to pull away. And yet I knew I should be this hot lover. Mm-hmm. And I should be acting like this cool guy, right? That I think Charlene thinks I am. Well, you know, good for her. She broke up with me about 2 weeks after that scene went down, because it was terrible. It was like, you know, the 40-year-old virgin dating or something.
Anyway, and credit where credit is due, Alan. You gave it your best guess.
I gave it my best Yes,
You did.
I was off.
I mean, and the truth is, we go back to those adolescent times, and it's like, I mean, bless us all, because that's all we all are. Everybody in those situations is nothing but a bundle of nerves and anxiety, and of course, the fact that it's, I mean, in adolescence, it's like. Later in adult life, a lot of people live this way, but in adolescence, it's like, like we're gonna say, well, what you need to do is just be honest and be clear about how you're feeling and stuff like that. And go like, yeah, okay, well, let's go talk to a bunch of adolescents and explain that to them.
That's right. Yeah, that's not going to fly anywhere. That's right. They're not going to buy that.
We're going to look like the old men that we are.
But you know what's interesting is that I'm very grateful that I got help at a very early age, which started to help me be able to identify what was really going on and talk about what I was really experiencing, and then discovered the value of authenticity in a relationship.
Yes.
And it was unbelievable. And look, as we're talking about that, what an important step it is in terms of emotional sobriety, right? To be able, and we'll be getting more into this, to support ourselves, because we'll talk next time about this cycle of experience, but that'll just be a teaser now. But I love where this discussion is going today. Patrick, what do you think about it so far?
Well, I was just thinking of, you do this great anecdote at the beginning of chapter 2, where it's Sam and Jennifer as a mother and daughter, and the daughter relating the pain of this. She's got a husband who's got addiction issues, or I think a husband or a boyfriend. Yep. And anyway, to your point, or what you were just talking about, the daughter has an expectation that the mom is supposed to, ride or die, no matter what happens, I've got your back. Right. And whereas I think she has this expectation, but she's not asking for the support. She's not, articulating, her needs and her point of view, which is, that her responsibility. It's all of our responsibilities to articulate that. And the ball is then in the other person's court, and I think there's that piece. And then the piece of identifying what expectations the mother might be having, and kind of putting yourself in her shoes, and trying to kind of like, if you're in a conflict with somebody, to try and dimensionalize it and understand, even if you don't agree, where the other person's, maybe their lack of emotional sobriety might be coming in.
You said something very important here. You're bringing up an important thing. When I take my need and create a should demand from it, and I put that should demand on someone else, one function of that is so that I'm not so vulnerable. So if it becomes a should and you reject it, you're not rejecting me. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You see, it's a real tricky deal.
Oh, that's good. I never thought about that exactly that way.
It's very
like that.
It's very, very tricky deal, because then I'm putting the should out there. I'm not putting myself out there.
Yeah.
You should do this. You should take care of me, Mom. Look, I've got COVID. I might need your help. Da-da-da-da-da. And a good mother should do that. Instead of the daughter saying, I'm in a real jam and I really need your help personally, Mom. It would mean a lot to me personally. See, that vulnerability now, it's like now I'm all in, right? Instead of it just being a demand that I'm putting in. And that, the way you said it just really got me to think about it that way, Patrick. That's great, because you're right. We're not being vulnerable at that time when we play that game.
You always talk about adding more self, right? Adding more self is one of the main things, right?
You can't subtract, you got to add. It's like, that's the thing. It's like, we're not going to get rid of any of these guys, but we can add better and wiser parts of us. But the other thing that just occurs to me when we're talking about it this way is something that I remember thinking about when I was doing my What Love Is book is how much we, with those should, let's even say should demand, but also should assumptions, is that basically that, and this is a classic one that we've all heard a lot of, and it's dangerous. And it is, if you loved me, then I wouldn't have to ask you this. If you loved me, you would know this. It's like, no, I do love you, but I'm not that smart. It's like, I'm not, it's like, the idea is, I've had people in my office say, well, I'll say, well, tell her, what would feel loving, and vice versa, but back and forth. And they would go like, well, but if they do it after I tell them, then that doesn't mean as much. And of course, what I'm going is, no, here's how if you're in therapy with somebody and you want to know if they love you, you'll notice that they're following up on the things we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's because you're communicating for the first time rather than just saying, the should assumption, which is, if you love me, you would know to do this. And if you love me, and Alan, you were saying, if you love me, basically, I wouldn't have to risk saying it.
Yeah, that's right. And
it's the risk.
Now, with the way you just said, what you just said got me to think of another part, the way to answer that, because I haven't answered that very well to people. But you know what I just thought of? Isn't it an interesting conclusion that if they do that, it's because they feel they should do it rather than because they're responding to your need because they love you? Isn't that an interesting thing, that the thought goes to neutralizing it or even denigrating it, degrading it, and saying, well, if you give it to me after I ask for it, it's not as good.
Yeah.
As though somehow, if they read our mind and gave it to us, that would be more valuable.
Right. But the other piece about this, it goes back to you and is it Charlotte? What was the girlfriend's name? Charlene. Sorry, apologize, Charlene. It's like
Charlene. Sorry.
All of this stuff we're talking about, all three of us, what it brings me to is like just sort of this scratch my head wow moment when I'm looking like, oh, that's what so many of us are doing, as we move into our adult life, is we're all just guessing and role playing. We're trying to figure, I think this is the right thing to do, or this is the right thing to feel or to act or to say. And it's like, and of course, everything about what your book is about, everything about the emotional expression, but what this particular book is about coming home to yourself.
Yeah.
And being able to say, if I, rather than sit around and try to put it together and guess, have my life be guessing, I'm going to learn how to trust myself by going inside and living, what we like to say a lot, from the inside out. Yeah. I'm not trying to figure it out there. I'm not trying to figure it out so that other people will approve of me. I'm not so that I will get an A+ on this relationship today. I need to be real for myself.
Yeah. No, right on, Tom. That's right on. It's funny you said that we're coming home in many ways. And
yeah.
It's weird. The last few days, and also it's because of this moving stuff, but it also resonates with what you just said. That song by Grand Funk Railroad, "I'm Getting Closer to My Home."
Yes. Love that song.
It's been playing over and over and over again in my consciousness. And it's one of my favorite songs of that band. I mean, but yeah,
by the way, I have a playlist that's called the Burger Rutledge playlist on my phone. That's anticipating when we finally get back together in person and can do workshops and have our own playlist. And that's on. That's interesting. That song is on there.
Look Absolutely. At that. How about that? Isn't that cool when that comes together?
I love it.
What I try to do in the book is I really wanted people to have examples. I just didn't want it to be a theoretical book. I wanted it to be very practical, where people see that. And I think in the Sam and Jennifer issue, right, with Sam turning to her mom and mom, then, not being there for her, feeling bad, and then going to make Jennifer wrong because she asked her. I mean, all this other nonsense that went on between them. What I loved about it is that they both had expectations that they needed to look at. And I think that that's such an important thing, right? Because if something's going south, it's never just one person's fault, right? I've got a hand in it. The other person has a hand in it, and if we're both off-centered and not grounded in the way that we're going to be talking about in terms of keeping our emotional center of gravity, and we'll get into that. Won't get into that today, but if I'm not grounded, then I'm going to get lost in my reactivity to the whole situation as well. And it's interesting. Murray Bowen was the father of this of differentiation and putting it and applying it to psychology. And one of the things that he says over and over again, he says, as we mature, we go from reacting to acting. And the difference is the thoughtfulness. It's exactly what you said a minute ago, Tom, when you said you've got that gatekeeper and saying, okay, no, we're not going to say that. No, we'll push that. There it is. That's the acting. That's the sorting through possibilities and saying, this is what I think is my best choice here.
It's a conscious choice.
It's a conscious choice. And in many ways, emotional sobriety is about getting more conscious like that, isn't it?
Well, the other piece, yes, it is that. And it's like the other thing I realize is it's about something that I'm always talking to couples I work with about is like, if you can get I tell people, if you can get your defenses down and just leave them down, I don't care, for 3 or 4 extra sentences to get through before they pop back up, you're going to get clarification. And see that, and that makes the difference between whether or not you're just trying. It's a debate about perspective. No perception. What I see is right. Now what you see is right. It's like you're never going to win that because no two people see something the same. And at that point, all we're doing is trying. We're not even necessarily trying to blame other people. We're just trying not to be blamed. And the only way we know how to do that in that reactive state is by blaming somebody else. Politicians do this all the time. It's like nobody, but I'll tell you what you're not doing when you're just fighting back and forth about who's to blame is you're not solving a problem.
That's right. Nope. You're just throwing gasoline on a fire.
Mm-hmm.
You're just exacerbating it. You're making it worse. That's so true. I just thought of this one thing the idea about perception and stuff like that. There was this joke that Father Martin used to tell about that there was a psychiatrist with his friend, and they were at this cocktail party. And there was this one guy going around, telling everybody he was dead. And the guy really believed it.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychiatrist said to his buddy, he says, I'll bet you I can change that guy's mind and prove to him that he's not dead. The guy says, okay, here's $100. We'll bet you $100. So he goes up to the guy and says, hey, look, I'd like to invite you to do some free work with me. So would you mind showing up at my office tomorrow? Some free therapy. And the guy said, oh, that'd be great. So the guy comes to his office. He says, look, this is going to be a real quick treatment. He says, what I want you to do is I want you at first, when you get up out of bed at lunchtime and before you go to bed at night, I want you to say to yourself 10 times, dead men don't bleed. Are you willing to do that? The guy says, yeah, of course I am. So he said, come back in a week after you've done this every day. The guy comes back in a week later and says, well, he says, did you do it? He says, Doc, 30 times a day, just like you told me. Got up, looked in the mirror and said, dead men do not bleed. At lunchtime I did it, looking in the mirror and right before I went to bed. He says, great, now come on over here. The guy comes over next to the doc. Doc isolates the guy's index finger, takes out a pin. He says, this isn't going to hurt much. He says, I'm just going to prick your finger real quick. And he pricks his finger and he presses on it. And there's a bead of blood that now surfaces, emerges right on the guy's finger. The guy looks at his finger, looks at the doc, looks back at his finger, looks at the doc. He goes, Doc, dead men do bleed.
The mind of an addict. How quickly
it's like even when we get evidence, sometimes if we're so convinced and we need something to be the way it is, and that's what we got to look at. That's the other part of this emotional sobriety is being to be able to shift our perspectives and realize that dead men do bleed, right? That kind of a thing. So but you've seen Father Martin and I've seen Father.
Yeah, I love
There's nobody that tells a joke as good as Father Martin.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it too. That's before we finish, one of the things I want to say in relation to your book and what Patrick was bringing up too, and what you said about the Jennifer and Sam. It's like part of what makes your not just this book, but others as well, so good is you're a great storyteller. And it's like, and I love the fact that we get to teach both theoretically and through stories.
I've been around a lot of people that were great storytellers, and that's how I learned.
I think you're one of them.
Well, so look, I'm excited. We're going to stay with chapter 2 next time, Patrick, as you suggested. So please, join us and come on back. And I'm going to be heading to, where am I going?
You're going to get
for the best ball in Jersey, baby.
And I have to apologize. I feel very cruel for eating my sandwich in front of you just now, in light of your difficulty.
I may never forgive you for that, Patrick.
He didn't know. He didn't know. We need to work on this.
No, you don't know, Patrick. You didn't know that, Dr. Burgess. You're starving to death. So let me go before I kill one of my kids when I walk.
All right, you go do that. All right,
you guys. I love you, and I'll see you guys next week.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.